Sure there's more than one way, and if you get different advice on that, I'm sure there's more than one way to be successful with that. So I'm just sharing what's worked for us. It took me a lot of years to really understand this, but it's easier to have like a $50 to $100,000 per month agency that's streamlined and has one deliverable than like it's almost 8 grand a month. 8 times 12 is like 9,600 a year, or 96,000 a year. So it's almost like 6 figures with 2 fucking people, right? Like. I think we're back. There we are. There we go. All the best looking people and the smartest people are here first to listen to me. No, for real, I appreciate you guys checking out this show. You know, actually, there was a time, to be honest, where I actually thought about, not that many people check in each week. Maybe I'm just putting too much work together. And then a couple of you guys have said, you're like, hey, you're religious listeners. You check this out in the car. You stream it when you're exercising. You do all the stuff. And it's had a big impact. So, we just keep growing it and growing it and growing it. It's exciting because you guys make this as awesome as it is. I'm excited to have you. And I really appreciate you guys listening. Don't have any announcements for you this week. There's nothing exciting other than, we got some cool stuff in the store and we got the wolf pack for those of you guys who are interested. And I just love hearing from you guys in general. So I'm going to get into the good stuff. Let's get into it. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages, Frankie Fihn proudly brings you our weekly Q&A. If the dad gun doesn't impress you, then nothing will. All right, let's get into the questions. You guys are building some cool agencies, and, we're in the trenches. We got challenges. Let's talk about them. So Vlad says, hey, guys, I'm running a dynamic ad for a client. Facebook chose a winner creative pretty early. And got great results for 2 to 3 weeks. Now CPL increased because the frequency is between 2 and 4. I have new creatives prepared. What would be the best approach now? Delete the good but exhaustive creative, add the new ones to the exact same ad. How about the other creatives that remain pretty much unused because Facebook chose a winner early? Do I delete them or keep them? How would you do it? Vlad, so I actually experienced this exact challenge a lot in the early days of running Facebook ads to attorneys. There was a couple of different ways I could target them, but one of them was with their job title. And the audience size was about 80,000, which for those of you guys who haven't run Facebook ads is not a huge number of people. It's kind of small. And so I would saturate them with my ads pretty quickly. And every time I tried to go to like a bigger, broader audience, it never caught the same way. So I figured I'd rather show my ads more to people that it's working. And so we would constantly have to change the creatives. Now, what I found, as long as you have 3 that are working, you can show them ad number 1. And then when that tires out, you can show them ad number 2. And then you can show them when that one tires out, ad number 3. And when ad number 3 gets tired, you can go back to creative number 1, the thing that was seen too much. And you can cycle between those, especially when you're dealing with a small audience, so that your stuff continues to work. And then here's the other piece in Facebook. You can take a creative that's working and just change the image, and it'll get new life out of it, in my experience. Facebook ads, I love it because, it's such a great way to get business in the door quickly. But my hatred side of it is the fact that whatever set and forget is in the advertising space, Facebook is the polar opposite of that. We actually have some ads on our YouTube stuff that I literally don't even log in once a month to look at, and they just keep working and working and working and working and working and working. Facebook is the opposite of that. You got to pay a lot of attention, but it's an unrivaled machine when you know how to do it. But that always worked for us, is once your frequency starts getting up there, just go from ad number 1, ad number 2 to ad number 2. Then when ad number 2 stops working, go to 3, and then when 3 stops working, go back to 1. And you don't have to constantly come up with new stuff. It kind of it's the best of both worlds, where you're coming up with new stuff because social media always wants something new, but at the same time it's not this hard work, especially for those of you guys who have a core service that's going to be the same for 10 years, where you're not changing it every kind of 5 minutes or whatever. So I hope that's helpful, Vlad. That's what's worked for us. I'm sure there's more than one way, and if you get different advice on that, I'm sure there's more than one way to be successful with that. So I'm just sharing what's worked for us, and I hope that's useful to you. Michael says, I own an ecom business and want to do paid Facebook ads on my own. No agency request, please. I'm familiar with the theory of creating video ads with UGC. My question, since I have several hundred products, how can I create a video ad for each product in a cost-efficient way and on scale? What services do you use? How do you test many creatives with a low-risk budget? Thanks for sharing your process with me. So firstly, Michael, I don't envy those of you guys who do e-commerce Facebook ads because there's so much to be on top of because you have so many different products and things like that. So I want to share a little insight into, I'm not a huge e-commerce guy, but I have obviously lots of friends who've built like wildly successful e-commerce stores. Some of them doing like $500,000 a day and more in their e-commerce stores. Like I have some friends that run really, really big e-commerce brands. And this is one of the things that I found. Is typically that my friends who've had the most success are constantly testing products, and they find for every like 50, 100 products they test, there will be like one or two of them that because of 80-20 will almost outsell everything else they do. And inevitably you have that now. So if like your store has any traction at all, you're selling specific things, and there's an 80-20 where like 10 or 20 products probably represent all of your sales. And there's like 1, 2, maybe 3 products that are like the best seller heavy hitters. So if I was going to run Facebook ads, and this is what, you know, probably a deeper principle that all of you can use, is stack the deck in your favor. Like the goal of Facebook ads is not to take your hard to sell products and try and get those. Take the easy to sell thing and sell more of it. Like, you know, if I was working with a restaurant, I'm not, but I would say like, hey, what's your best selling menu item? And if they said, oh, everybody loves our chicken fingers, then I would run ads for the chicken fingers. I wouldn't try and sell all the other stuff that's never been demonstrated to sell. And if you sell things that people have like proven behavior demonstrated to respond to, and you have some data to see that, you're always going to make it easier. So I wouldn't try and approach like, how can I sell 100 things? Maybe I'd get them on an email list and sell those as like back-end offers, but like get them in the door with whatever your best seller is, like whatever your foot in the door. Like, you know, interestingly enough, for me, by the way, as an agency kind of coach, mentor, whatever you want to call it, everybody asks me about outreach and Loom stuff. So I tend to talk a lot about outreach and Loom stuff, but they're not actually my favorite topics. That's just the 80-20 of what I notice people are most interested in. So it's the same kind of thing, is like you'll have your own 80-20 and your clients will have their own 80-20. In fact, any of you guys can do this. When you have a client, is just ask them like, hey, what are the thing that you sell the most of or the easiest, and you know, people pay you the most for it. And it almost always, they're not pushing that thing, right? Like when I used to work with plastic surgeons, they'd say, oh, I really want to sell nose jobs. I really want to sell facelifts. I really want to do mommy makeovers. And I was like, why don't we just push more of that, right? Like that's the thing that's working. So you'd be amazed at how people don't notice the obvious and try and sell hard to sell things instead of do more of what's working. I look at paid ads personally, like this is my formula. I'm not saying like this is the formula, but I hate wasting money on paid ads like all these years. So I look at it as an amplification tool. Like how can I amplify something that I know has already worked? So I usually like to do organic stuff where I'm investing my time and my energy, but once I have that dialed in and I have winners, then I like to add paid ads to that because I know it's going to work, right? So I think that's personally like my favorite strategy. I hope that's useful to you, my man. Raul says, what's the largest number of clients you've served before you making your first hire? Raul, I'm going to give you the ultimate like lawyer answer, and I say this as somebody who worked in that industry a lot of years. Whenever you ask a lawyer any question, it doesn't matter what fucking question you ask, the lawyer is going to give you the answer, it depends. And the answer is, it depends. And I'll tell you the biggest variable for how many clients can you get before you need to hire somebody is two variables. Variable number one is how complex or simple is your deliverable, right? If you're just doing like a simple reactivation campaign and that's your deliverable, you could probably have a lot more clients than say somebody who's doing SEO. Like if you're doing SEO and like SEO, like, you know, has a lot of moving pieces, a complex deliverable, you're probably not managing 15 clients by yourself. I'm not saying it's impossible, but like just the sheer amount of content and things you got to stay on top of and tools, you probably need some help sooner. So it depends a little bit on what you're doing. And there was a second thing, and I'm blanking on it a little bit right now. My brain's a little tired, daddy brain. We just had Heidi B's 5th birthday yesterday, so it's a big party and a big celebration. My kids are spoiled, man. They have better birthdays in 1 year than I had my entire, like, I don't know, childhood growing up in the ghetto. What was the second thing? Oh, the second thing is based on how big do you actually want to build this agency? Like, if you're only trying to have like 5-10 clients, as many people are, like if your goal is to get to 10, 20, 30K a month, whatever, like you can do that sometimes 5, 10, 15 clients. So you may not want to hire, and your goal may be to keep as much of that as possible. If you're trying to build a 7-figure agency, then hire as soon as possible, right? Because like you want to get yourself out of the day-to-day work. In fact, you can almost tell how successful somebody is at running their business based on how in the trenches they are. So meaning if they're actually like logging to WordPress and building the anchor text and clicking links, they're probably making less money than somebody who's actually focused on growing the business and blah, blah. And almost always that comes with help. And so what people get caught up in, a lot of times what gets people stuck is they want to own 100% of the grape. So they're kind of like hesitant to hire somebody because they know it'll cut into their profits and their margins. But in reality, it's like it's way better to own 50% of a watermelon than 100% of a grape. And so if you can build it bigger and have a team where people are actually doing the work, this has always boggled my mind. And it took me a lot of years to really understand this. But it's easier to have like a $50,000 to $100,000 per month agency that's streamlined and has one deliverable than it is to have a $10,000 to $15,000 a month generalist agency where you're doing all this work. Because in the generalist agency, you are the service, you're the deliverable, you're doing it all. At the $50,000, $100,000 mark, you likely have systems and teams and processes, and therefore, like those are the things that carry the business forward. And so it's actually easier to make 70 grand a month than 10. It sounds very strange, but it's a different set of challenges. You have to be good at hiring and systems and things like that. But once you understand that, like it's actually easier from a day-to-day stress and all of that kind of point of view. Our man Lachlan, I love that name. Just cool. So he's got some thoughts from Australia. He says, "Hello everyone. I'm approaching." I just want to add one more thing, actually, Raul, on that last thing before I forget. Is I like to hire as soon as possible. That's my personal philosophy. I want to get out of the trenches as fast as humanly possible, and specifically, I like getting myself out of operations. Usually, you're going to get yourself out of one of two places. You're going to get out of sales because you hate doing it, or you're going to get out of operations because like it's not the highest and best use of your time. So it depends a little bit on like where your skill set is, but usually you're going to outsource one of those two things as fast as humanly possible. Okay, anyways, back to Lachlan. Hello, everyone. I'm approaching deal sourcing through podcast interviews and building rapport, getting some success, but not much. I love to help them out and try to find any way I can assist the deal source. I'd be interested in hearing about how other people are approaching it and what has been working in progressing that conversation to build a referral source. Love Jay Abraham's work on strategic partnerships, but I get a little lost once connections have been made, how to really push referrals. Obviously, the 90-day challenge was giving me a little bit of insight, but would be interested to hear how you structure deals. Frankie Fihn, P.S. Random Thinking in Australia. My man, good to hear from you. So let me give you some specifics on like deal source mentality. For those of you guys who aren't familiar with it, I call this deeper idea the shoe stores. So like the idea is if you sell shoes, like if you imagine marketing services as an equivalent of selling shoes, you always want to sell to people who buy shoes. It sounds so simple, but what most people do is they try and logically sell to people who are barefoot because they have a need. So they say like, hey, your business would blow up if you let me like market your business, and you get more sales and more customers and more leads. And those people generally don't have a proven history of buying that. And what you actually want to do is sell shoes to somebody who has 200 pairs of shoes in the closet, right? And so somebody who like already buys Facebook ads, already buys sometimes multiple websites. They'll have like for 5 different areas of their business, they'll have 5 different websites, and also like, you know, pays for billboards and radio and TV. Like those actually tend to make for the best clients, and they value spending money on marketing and advertising. A lot of times we think they have it all figured out, but they actually have more problems because there's more to manage. Like just like the lawyers I know who do TV, they got to manage like media buying, and they got to figure out what creatives, and they got to figure out how much to spend, and how do we allocate our money, how frequently should we run the ads, how do we measure it, and who takes care of the tracking phone number, and do we have a jingle, you know, what sort of graphics go in it. Like they have endless things to think about, and so they actually need more good help than the person who's barefoot. Now there's a level past that for those of you guys who haven't heard me talk about this before, that I call the shoe stores, which is if they're buying marketing services and things like that, they're buying them from somewhere, and almost always that whole trail leaves or that whole buying thing leaves a trail. And so I focus on the people who have proven history of buying, and the easiest way to do that is to find somewhere they're already buying it. So a couple example, Lachlan mentioned podcasts, that's one of them, but there's also like whatchamacallit, there's like conferences and things like that. There's software and tools. There's other marketing services they buy from other companies. There's websites, there's books, there's magazines, there's coaching programs and things like that. So there's like all these places where they consume and buy and get this best information and help and things like that. And I usually like to start with the conferences because almost always, not only the conference is a shoe store, but people come to them and exhibit. And so there's other shoe stores that come to the conference. And so it's a big collection of shoe stores where you can get to know like all the major players in your space very, very quickly. And so he's talking about how do you do this. Now, this is a different mentality than going after deals one-to-one because it's back-end loaded, meaning you got to help them first. So the first step in any sort of shoe store interaction is I just look at what are they trying to do. And it's not usually super secret. Like if you just go to their website and peruse it for like 2-3 minutes, you'll get an idea of who they are, what they're trying to sell, who they're trying to sell it to, and all those things. So like, for example, if I click on a couple of the restoration ones I'm looking at, they have live events. So they're trying to sell live events. They have courses and certifications. So they're trying to sell courses and certifications. They have podcasts. They're trying to get people to watch the podcast. They got a YouTube channel. They're trying to get people to watch on YouTube. They have a paid membership. They're trying to get people into the paid membership. So essentially anything you do that helps them move the needle in one of those things will be useful. And how I think about it is, and the reason why we do it this way is because I shit you not, for those of you guys who can just go with me on that journey and trust me a little bit on this, if you've never done this, you can do $1 million a year with one strategic partnership. One fucking partnership can be $1 million a year in business easily. And if you're already doing $1 million, you can add a second $1 million just with one strategic partnership. And so how I like to do it is like I help and I give before I get. I always, like if I know they're trying to sell certifications, then I help them my best, what I know how. And I always approach it like, what's the most impactful thing I could do for them with the least amount of time and energy? Now, you mentioned specifically there's a podcast. So podcasts really want like two things. They want more listeners and good shows, right? Like that's really it. So rather than like some roundabout way, like when I usually go to a podcast, I just pitch them on being a guest and coming up with a good show. Now, the way I have a script that works really well. I should say not a script, it's a framework. I learned it from a coach named Mark Mawhinney. And this is how I approach podcasts. And it basically is an irresistible offer. So the first thing I do is I personalize it and I just mention something of theirs that they actually said or did on their show. And you don't have to go into super detail. Like you can just click one episode, scroll in 10 minutes, listen for 30 seconds and talk about that piece. Hey, I liked your episode about, growing a plastic surgery clinic and how you guys were talking about the importance of being active on Instagram. That interview with Jay so-and-so was great, right? So like I mentioned something specific and personalized. That way they know like I'm writing this to you. This is not some copy and paste generic thing. Second thing I do is I know they're interested in good show ideas. So I look at what they've done and I say, hey, this would make a really good addition show idea. And I'm giving the idea like that. This is a key mentality with all of this is like I'm giving in the form of ideas. So I have a cool show idea for you. That's the second thing I do. And then the third thing I say is like, I would be happy to like promote your show after I'm done. And that's either in the form of like, I have an audience I'm going to share it with, or I'm going to post it on my social media, or I'm going to put a little bit of paid ads behind it so that I can like share your message. So I want to help you grow your podcast by sharing the message. So I find if you do those three things, like some kind of personalized, cool show idea, I want to promote your stuff, that's basically irresistible to any podcaster. And for the most part, you may not be able to get on like Joe Rogan doing that, but like any sort of like A minus B level podcast that has like a real active engaged audience, they'll be happy to put you on, and you help them accomplish what they're trying to do. And then the cool thing is, once you do the podcast, if you understand this, like that is the start of a relationship. And so people screw this up as they do the podcast and move on. But the reason why you want to do that is like, say I go on the restoration podcast and they know all the people I want to know in an industry, or I go on the personal injury podcast and they have all the personal injuries I want to know. Like the best thing you can do is actually forge and build a relationship and get in their good graces. And the best way I've found to do that is like treat it like your friends. Like, so I do two things. One is if I have something helpful, I send it to them. Like I think about my people and I send them helpful stuff. And the easiest way to do that, just like click on their website, see what they're trying to do, see what they're posting, give them cool ideas, give them helpful shit. And the second thing is, I don't always talk to my friends with agendas. I don't know about the rest of you guys. Sometimes I just like, hey, dude, I was thinking of you and got a laugh about, your trip to blah, blah, blah. And that's it, right? And like, there's no agenda. So if you want to forge relationships, and what will happen inevitably if you can just stay with this, and I found in the 90-day challenge, and mind you, I'm a little bit experienced with this, but it took about 26, 27 days, and then we started getting deals on the back end, and now they're starting to come. I actually have another web design that we're signing up this morning. And it's like, they're just coming, right? Because like these people, like if they're a real shoe store, they know everybody who buys shoe in their industry because they've been doing it 10 years. Like if you think about, in my case, like one of the first shoe stores I got connected with was a plastic surgery conference, or I went to those too, but a personal injury conference. And I met the guy who ran the conference and we collaborated on something, and then we eventually did more and more. Well, he had spent 10 years doing live events for plastic surgeons and putting out content every day and having a podcast. So like everybody he knows is a personal injury lawyer, and he knows thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands of them. So if you get in his good graces and he decides to recommend you, he doesn't have just like one or two people he can recommend you. He can recommend you 100, 1,000 even, and will also put you into their flow. Like you can do co-create on trainings and share cool ideas with their audience. And hey, I have an offer for your people, and I want to give them some sort of freebie. So if you think about it like that, that's the game, is to start it out with do something useful to them. In the case of a podcast, like it ain't super complicated. They're trying to get people to listen to it, and they're trying to come up with cool shows. So like hey, let me solve that problem right now. And like it's also like it's not a one-time problem, meaning like they don't make one podcast episode and it's satisfied forever. So you can like be helpful to them in an ongoing way. Like, hey, I have more ideas to promote your stuff. So like one of the simplest things I might do is like, hey, if you take this one long form podcast and you chop it up into 10, 12 short videos, like you can get way more mileage out of one podcast episode. And I just happened to do that with my AI snipping tool. So I created like 10, 12 little snippets of your podcast you can go use and share on social media. So now you got like, more ways to generate listeners, right? Like that's a helpful thing I might do. So there's no one size fits all approach, but like as long as you're helpful to them, it's going to be super useful. Michael says, when you work with a white label agency, what margins do you typically look for and how do you get them? I got to apologize a little bit on this one, Michael, because your question got somehow filtered, like this, whatever you said or did in there triggered a spam bot. Nothing like I have set up personally. It's just Facebook groups automatically. And so even though you asked this question like a month ago, I just noticed it in the spam folder and just approved it. So chances are you probably have moved on that. I usually shoot for 50%. That way you're still passing on value to the client, but there's enough that you can make margin and not have to focus on being in the day-to-day in the trenches and all that. And I think for most people, like getting anywhere from like 20 to 50,000 a month is ideal, of like just having a white label partner worry about that shit. If you go bigger, you may want to like keep it all in house, but depends a little bit on you. Arena says, experienced agency owners, what would you do? See the email I received from our graphic designer subcontractor in the Philippines, a mom of two. We've been working together for 6 months. I'm sorry asking for such a favor. I'm writing this email using my phone. My laptop broke down. Been fixing it for hours now. I cannot find the graphics you assigned. I would like to humbly ask if I can borrow funds to buy a laptop at $1,200. We'll pay you after a month if that is okay. Once I'm able to save. I have no one to ask for this. I will immediately buy the laptop once the funds are available so I can finish the pending work. I promise I will pay you, or else I won't be able to feed my family. I know this is hard, especially when somebody's giving you a sob story, and I'm not saying this is the right answer for everyone. I'm just telling you what I've done is I have helped people with laptops in the past, in the Philippines specifically, and I only like to do it with somebody who's been with me at least a year. Because when it's a year, it tends to be more legitimate, and you've gotten to see their work ethic and that they're consistent, they actually deliver. And chances are that it really is a real laptop issue, and they do need like new machinery. When I find it's more bullshit, and they're just trying to kind of give you a sob story so they can hit you up for money, is when it comes very early on in the relationship and there's some sob story for why they can't finish the work, whatever. If you ever found you give those people money, you'll never hear from them again. So it's up to you. It's a judgment call. There's no one size fits all, but I'm just telling you a guideline for me is a year is the marker. I will help you with family situations and stuff like that after a year. The other thing is some people are just perpetually in money woes, and they're gonna constantly need you to do some fucking wild and crazy shit. And I don't typically like those relationships with my VAs. Like, I like them just simple, like, you get paid on Monday, low drama. Like, if once in a while there's a surprise expense and you need some help, like, you know, one of my VAs messaged me, sent me some pictures, say, I was in a car accident, I don't have insurance, I got to pay for this out of pocket. Is there any chance you could forward me, you know, a couple $100 so I can get this fixed and I'll pay you back? And I was like, sure, but that's somebody who's been with me for like a long time, right? And they don't have a history of just like randomly asking for money. And I know they're not going to ask for it again in like 2 weeks or whatever. So like, you know, different situations, you like, you know, you got to kind of play it by ear, but those are some guidelines that have helped me. So I hope that's useful for you. And also like $1,200 is pretty steep for a laptop in the Philippines. So like that one doesn't feel legitimate to me. Like there's probably some other money issues that are like going on and they got themselves into trouble and are using you as a sob story to fix it. Anyway, my 2 cents. Hope that's helpful. Kevin says, hey, hope all is well. I currently run an advertising agency that specializes in providing PP services to med spas and private medical practices. I'm having issues regarding client acquisition when contacting practices directly, as I'm having difficulty getting past the receptionist and to the owner or director who's in charge of marketing decisions. Any advice on getting through the gatekeepers will be much appreciated. Kevin, I'm going to give you 3 answers. Answer number 1 is if you actually involve the gatekeepers as part of the collaboration, meaning like you see them as not somebody to get around, but somebody to assist you with getting answers and information, you'll approach them totally different. I learned this from a guy named Ari Gelper, and he would say when he was cold calling, he used to say like this magic script everybody says, which is, hey, I'm Frankie Fihn and I'm calling from company XYZ, and the reason I'm calling today is because blah, blah, blah. And now you already know, even before I finish that sentence, that I'm just trying to sell you something, and I'm going to give you a pitch whether you ask for it or not. And what he switched to is like mirroring the language of the customer, and he would just see the receptionist as somebody trying to do their job, trying to help direct traffic to the right places. And he would just call them up and say, hey, you know, Deb, I'm trying to reach the person who's in charge of marketing decisions at your company. I have something that I think would be really interesting. Would it be okay if I just left them a little voicemail, and if they're interested, they can call me back? Who would that be? And they'll usually go, oh, you got to talk to Dave, the owner. I can put you through to his voicemail and blah, blah, blah. And that's it. All right. Like, so collaborate with them. Don't try and get around them. Second answer to that question is in industries like yours, where there is a gatekeeper, dentists, doctors, medical, lawyers, accountants, a lot of high-end ticket, professional services, there's a gatekeeper. I like to do a lot of direct mail because you can send direct mail to owner's name, and we use a service called Click to Mail, which costs about $1 a letter. If you get a list of like 100, 200 shoe buyers, what I find is like people who've proven to buy the kind of thing, you can send 100, 200 letters and usually sign a client, $50, $100, $200, all it takes in mail cost to sign a client. And especially if you got a really good proven offer that's proven to work. And so I like sending stuff in the mail because it gets around the gatekeepers, and then you don't even have to have a conversation with all. And then the third way I was going to say, I've said this forever, and I don't know why it's not more popular of an idea. It takes a little longer to set up, but inbound is always better than outbound. Let me say that again, because I don't think enough people really fucking understand that. Because if you're going to be in this game for the long term, you want inbound leads, not outbound leads. That means people coming to you pre-sold, predisposed, having watched something, consumed something. So like in this 90-day challenge, I've had people, they say, hey, I watched your podcast at this shoe store, or I read your magazine article, blah, blah, blah. And they're coming to me, right? I am not chasing them down. Sorry, I just want to write something down before I forget. So I just had an idea. That's how I get anything done. But the cool thing about inbound is they consume stuff and come to you, and you'll be able to feel this in terms of temperature. What I mean by that is, if you do cold outbound, I'm not saying you can't make sales, but it's infinitely harder because most people are going to be like 2 out of 10, 3 out of 10 on the temperature, warmth, on the idea of working together with you, and you feel the kind of coldness and arms crossed. And I understand why people do it, because a lot of times, like, when you just need to drum up business and nobody knows who you are and blah, 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 and like that, like, it's the fastest way to get in real conversations. But I think it's the weakest long-term strategy because it's always an uphill effort, kind of grunt worky. It's like digital door knocking. You got to like constantly be knocking on doors to drum up business. As where if you're collaborating with the shoe stores and the top players in your industry and putting out authority-driven content, people will discover you and come to you. And the reason why most people don't do it is because it takes a little bit longer. So like in the case of the restoration thing, I had to figure out, firstly, it took me a couple hours just to figure out who the movers and shakers were in the industry, and that was like a bunch of Google searches. And then I figured out, okay, here's a top podcast. I would like to be part of that. Well, now I have to like pitch them, and when I pitch them, and then we ended up scheduling a podcast. It took like 2 weeks before we actually recorded an episode, and then it took them like 4 more weeks to actually publish the episode. So it was like, from the time I started, it was like 6 weeks start to finish. But the end result is at the end of 6 weeks, people go, hey, I watched your podcast. And they come to me pre-sold. And I don't have to chase anyone or do anything or convince anyone else. And that to me is like 1,000 times preferred, because you end up talking to the 7s out of 10, the 8s out of 10, the 9s out of 10. And sometimes even people who are 10 out of 10 were like, all right, well, I'm ready to give you money. Like, are you okay with having me? That's a way better sales conversation. I think it's just more energy efficient. And there's a deeper idea behind this. It took me a lot of years to realize this, and many mentors, is I want my digital assets to do the selling, not me, or not my salespeople either. And the reason is because it has infinite leverage ROI. Now, what do I mean by that is, okay, if you're doing digital door knocking and doing like cold outreach and messaging a bazillion people, which it sounds like you are, and getting stopped at the gatekeepers, that whole machine stops the minute you stop knocking on doors. Meaning, like, if you want it to be a consistent machine, you have to endlessly be knocking on doors and endlessly be messaging people and endlessly hustling. And then you will generate conversations. And often, because they're cold, those conversations are not quick, easy sales. They're long, drawn-out conversations. Sometimes a lot of back and forth. They're usually like 60, 90-minute calls. And you got to feel each other out, and they're kind of convincing. And even if you bring in a salesperson, like, you know, you're just dumping that energy hurdle on someone else. Now, as where, like, for example, like when we sell our stuff through a 5-minute Loom video, well, once I nail that recording, like that video is basically like a perfect take I can use over and over. I don't mean it's perfect like I'm nailed the perfect, you know, recording of it, in the sense it's good enough that it works. That's what I should say when I say a perfect take. It's good enough that it works. Like that, like whether 10 people watch that, 100 people, 1,000, it's no extra effort for me. And it's amazing to me still, even like 4 years after selling this way, is people come to us and they say, all right, I'm in. Like I just got one this morning in my inbox. All right, I'm ready to go. What's next? How do I buy this thing? Right? It's kind of amazing to me how that works. And they already know what the cost is. They know the details. There isn't really that much to talk about other than like, do I think they're a fit? So I think long-term, like putting out authority-driven content that brings doctors to you is a way better fucking strategy and works way better long-term. And yes, there's a little bit of runway you got to build, but it doesn't take like a long time. Like, is 6 weeks really that fucking long? Especially if you can bring people to you pre-sold, I don't think it is. So I'm a way bigger fan of like, bring the doctors to you, don't chase the doctors. Interestingly enough, the way I do that is with outreach. But what's different is what most people are doing is outreach, chasing people in their industry one-to-one. I'm like, where do they already buy shoes from? Let me just talk to that person. So if I'm going into dentistry, there's already a top dentistry mastermind. There's a top dentistry course. There's a top dentistry podcast. There's a top dentistry conference. I look at those people as collaboration partners so we can create authority-driven content that brings people to us. And it's like, let's just collaborate with the top podcast. And like, and we've actually had a couple of people, Josh comes to mind in our mastermind, where he's kind of switched this strategy and is only, just a short period of time into it. And he sent me a message that was something like, hey, the prettiest girl at the prom just replied, I can't believe the top podcast in the industry is like, open to talking with me about doing this. But they're already making a podcast. Why would they not be interested in making another cool episode? So the cool way of doing this is you bring people to you. But those are the three: is involve the gatekeeper, like turn them into a friend, not an enemy. And it's a lot of just how you approach that and how you talk to them, or bypass them with direct mail, or even better, which I think is the gold, is like bring them to you. Like it's way more energy efficient. Like, yeah, it takes a little bit more upfront work, but inbound to me is so much better. Inbound, authority-driven, like, hey, we watched your stuff and we're seriously considering working with you, is just a better way of doing it, to me, anyway. We'll get two more. Presley says, I'm not sure what I did wrong, but I'm running ads for a client, but the leads are coming from out of state. I thought I brought it to a 50-mile radius, but I'm not sure where I went wrong. Presley, likely the answer to that is, I've been reading a lot in some of the Facebook groups I'm part of. We're not experiencing this on our own ads right now because I'm not running anything that's necessarily local on Facebook. But they changed the targeting from people who live in this area to people who have live in or occasionally visited. So it means like if somebody takes a trip to Chicago and then goes back home to LA, when they're in LA, they'll still see the ad for the Chicago business. That's just a way of Facebook driving up their ad spend. So there's two solutions. Solution number one is you filter them with like some kind of contact form. Some way when they're coming to you where you say, do you live in Chicago? Check this box. And if they don't check that box, don't call them back, right? That's way number one. And way number two is you can target with like zip codes and stuff like that and get more specific. But this is a bigger trend that is happening that is bigger than just, hey, like I'm targeting people out of state. And this is the ad platforms, namely Google and Facebook, but probably some of the other ones as well. Google and Facebook are the ones I pay personally the most attention to. They are trying to move their algorithms away from you being able to choose your audience and them just saying, our AI algorithm will determine who needs to see these ads, and taking all of the targeting options out of the hands of business owners like you and me. And so you're going to see more and more of this where, hey, we're getting the wrong people showing up and there isn't a targeting option that we can tweak. And so the thing that I would focus on the most in that is really calling out the right people in the ad. It's just so underrated. Like for me, like a lot of years we started our ads, dear personal injury, with a law firm between 5 and 50 people who's currently spending on TV ads. Like it's so specific that anybody who's the wrong fit and sees that ad just would not respond, right? So you want to think about the ad as like kind of like a bouncer at a nightclub, only letting in the right people. So if you do that, even with the targeting options being fucked with, you'll end up with like, more of the right fit. Because I always say in advertising, there's a hidden metric that nobody keeps track of. People keep track of ROAS and cost per lead and click-through rates and all those things. And I'm not saying they don't matter, but the hidden metric in all of it is, are the right people coming through the end of the machine? And you can have all the right fucking cost per click and blah, blah, blah. But if you got a Chicago service and somebody's responding in LA, like you ain't going to sell a lot of shit. So I don't really care what your fucking click-through rate is. So like that's why the hidden metric is, are the right people coming through? I would rather pay more money in this example and have somebody from Chicago who's actually interested in like buying from that business than somebody who's far away but a cheaper lead cost, for example. That's why I say like getting the right leads on the other side of the machine is the hidden metric, and you got to pay secret attention to it because nobody actually notices. So hope that's helpful. Lonnie says, hey guys, hope you're well today. Quick question. We've been looking to streamline our SOP process, maybe using Scribe. Cool program, but it doesn't make a checklist for people to click off and save when they complete a process. But we paste Scribe into Asana. It deletes the cool screenshots, so not awesome. We're looking possibly into using Asana to organize the SOPs and then to paste the link to Scribe for details. Curious to see if there's a better way. We love the template structure of process sheet and how clean everything was, but now they're $100 a month, equals sad. Just gonna tell you what we do on that, Lonnie. Like I'm a loyal Asana user, and it's funny because everybody tells me about like better software, like ClickUp, for example, and Go High Level. And I'll tell you the reason I'm so resistant. I like stupid, simple, easy to use software. Like the first time I used Asana with no tutorial, no editing, no anything, I was able to figure out how to do it, and it's because it's literally just to-do list that you type in, assign to people, and give them instructions. And that's how I do work in the real world. So it was very easy for me to make that transition. Some people like Post-it notes, and so I could see somebody being more like a Trello person. There's no one perfect project management software. It's like whatever works best for you. But what we do in Asana is I put all of our SOPs into Google Documents, and then in Asana, just put a link to the Google document. I don't actually copy and paste that. Then you get all the images and all the things like that. And then what happens is we have it set for, especially for recurring tasks. So like say I have a lot of stuff that's due every Friday. So like Karen gets a list on Friday that this is what has to be done. And then she checks off those items as finished. And then the next week, it'll refresh all those tasks because they're ongoing repetitive tasks that we do. But that way I can see them getting checked off. And so I get emails that say like, Karen finished that, Mark finished that, and Chrissy finished that, and so forth. And I can see where the team is at with different tasks without having to talk to anybody. So I don't know if that's useful for you, but that's how we do it. And it's worked for me like that way for like many, many years now. And I'm not saying it's a perfect system, but like, I don't know, I like it. So I think it's stupid simple and it works. So I having said that, I'm not super familiar with Scribe, so I can't give you a take on that. But if it's saving you time and energy, like spend the $100 and just take it. That's not that expensive for a piece of software that can make your life easier in this agency world. don't know if you guys still that are live with us right now have any more questions. That's all I got so far in the system. And as always, I appreciate the awesome work you guys are doing, the businesses you guys are building, the impact you guys are having in the world, the cool stuff you're doing. I think this is such a cool business model, and having like working through this 90-day challenge. One of the interesting things for me is I had a chat with our white label partner Lane Hook from Quantum Agency. For those of you guys who don't know, quantumagency.io if you're interested in checking out his work. And one of the things we talked about is this is such a low bar for most people who are like coming from a 9-to-5 world. Like we're now at 6 clients, 6 people. And it was actually at 4 clients, at 4 people, that's it. Is more than like 99% of the world makes at a job. It's like it took us 4 people to say yes. And we basically replaced a 9-to-5 income. And I love that about this business model. Is like, it's not Starbucks where you need 1 million people to come buy coffee from you. Like sometimes just like 1, 2 people, 3, 4, 5, 6 people. Like your whole livelihood has changed with, and like when you start getting 10, 12, 20, 30, or 100, it's like it's massively impactful. And that's the beautiful thing about high ticket recurring services. So, you know, like it doesn't really take a lot to like move the needle. So some of you guys, like I know sometimes like, and I say this to those of you guys out there who are struggling, sometimes it feels like you're 1,000,000 miles away from your goal, and you're really just like 2-3 people away from like radically transforming your whole fucking life, right? Like for me, I actually remember the first time I had a big shift forward that way. I got 2 clients who came out of nowhere, and they actually set their own pricing. One said, I was willing to pay $3,500 a month for an employee for this, but I'd rather pay you. And one said I was willing to pay $4,000 a month to an employee, and I'd rather pay you. They both said that kind of thing. And we added like $7,500 a month in recurring income, and they ended up staying years and years with that. I don't have those clients now. This was like many, many years ago. But like it's almost $8,000 a month. 8 times 12 is like 9,600 a year, or 96,000 a year. So it's almost like 6 figures with 2 fucking people, right? Like the difference between like where I was like a week before that, we're struggling, sleeping on my girlfriend's couch and feeling broke, to like now I make 100,000 a year was 2 people, and it took 2 days, right? Like, you know, and there was a struggle period before that, so I don't want to make it like, you know, just magically like 2 people came in 5 minutes, but once I had those 2 people, like, man, like financially at least, everything got magically easier. Like all of a sudden, like there's guaranteed $7,500 a month that's going to be there that wasn't there before. So I say that to you guys, like those of you guys who are on the struggling side of it. You're never very far. And the same is true, by the way, for those of you guys who are doing well, but now you have like time and energy challenges where the work itself can be overwhelming and you're struggling. Like you're one system, one hire away from like getting a massive amount of stuff off your plate and being able to like really scale this business in the way you want, where to me, you're maximizing the impact you have and the lifestyle that comes with it, where you get to like do cool things. And for us, that was like Heidi's birthday, who just turned 5. My little oldest Heidi B turned 5. And it was a special day for me because it changed me as a human being, because it's when I became a dad. So like I have a lot of fond memories of her being born. George says, what strategy would you use to intrigue multiple law firms in order to get them to engage with you about more info about SEO, web development via Facebook Messenger? So this is one of those things, George, where I wouldn't actually talk to them about SEO and web development at all. SEO and web development are a hammer. And you know who wakes up today and says, like, what I need is a hammer? Is nobody. Like everybody, they got a hole. They're trying to build something. Like hammers are tools that are used for different things for different people. So what I would figure out is actually what the law firms are trying to build with SEO. And you'll see this, like, I'll give you an example in boutique law firms that do like a little bit of everything. Like one of the things that they can get a lot of is traffic tickets. Like people are always getting stopped and harassed in traffic tickets. The problem is, like, if somebody gets a $150 traffic ticket, they're not going to pay a lawyer like $34,000 to fight a $150 ticket. So like the lawyer can make like $150 maybe, and they usually like to pay a paralegal to do that work, and they end up paying the paralegal $100, which means they make $100 and they pay somebody $100 to fulfill on it. They make exactly 0 profit on that. And they can get this work all day long in volume. And maybe there's reasons to do it, because those people might come back to their law firm for a second service later and they make money on the second service. But usually you could bring them 1 billion fucking traffic tickets and they make no money. Now compare that to like a serious accident case. So like one example of this is a trucking accident. When somebody gets injured by like a tractor trailer truck, the damages tend to be very severe, like medically, as well as like to the material property, the car. So like those cases are often worth like hundreds of thousands of dollars because there's like serious injuries and there's car damage and all kinds of stuff like that, right? And so like just one of those can change that. So there's an example of what a deeper idea I'm talking about for all of you guys is an outcome. They're after they're trying to solve problems and create outcomes. And so you always want to frame your hammer in terms of problem it solves or outcomes it creates. So in the case of like a lawyer, how I've historically framed those things is most lawyers that have any level of success are working 60, 70, 80 hours a week. And the reason they're doing that is because they're doing a lot of low volume or high volume, cheap legal work. And if you say like, I'll focus on helping you bring one big trucking accident case or one big case or something like, an outcome that they're after. And usually the best outcomes are one of something. Then what happens is, then they become super interested. It just so happens that the vehicle you're using to get them there is website development and SEO. But they don't care about the website development and SEO. They're after the big cases. So like here's a magic number in personal injury. If you're going after personal injuries, attorneys, this may be useful to, is if they can get a signed case for $1,000 or less, they'll pay for that all day, every day. So like if you say to them, like, I can get you a signed accident case for $1,000, just a standard motor vehicle accident case, and you can actually deliver on that, they'll pay you all day, every day. It just so happens like your tool of fulfillment is like, I'm going to build you a website and rank it, or rank it. But they're not interested in that. They're interested in problems and outcomes. So you always have to know a little bit about your market and who they are and what they want. So it depends a little bit on which kind of law firms you're after. Because like a divorce attorney wants something different than a personal injury, wants something different than a estate planner. But overall, like they don't want the hammer. So like I don't even talk to them about the hammer. And then how I engage them in the actual conversations is it's really simple. Is I personalize each message to them. Like I just mentioned something that I noticed about them. Hey, saw you just got back from a trip to Memphis, right? Like whatever they're like is on their social most recently. I mentioned that, and then this is a powerful framework. Is where most people show up as the buy my shit guy. Like, hey, quick question for you. Would you be interested in buying my shit? And I found it more powerful to be the giver of cool ideas. And what I do is I give away ideas for free and charge for the implementation. So the way I would do that is with either a website. I would say, hey, saw you guys just got back from Memphis, and I had an idea for you for how you could sign motor vehicle accident cases for $1,000 by creating a little mini site for that. Would it be cool to just share a little video of what I had in mind? Right? That's how I open with a lot of people. And of course, when I give them the idea of how they could go and build this themselves, knowing that they can't build it themselves, and so they're going to need your help. But it is a powerful framework because you, instead of showing up as the asshole buy my shit marketer, you're the, hey, I have a cool idea for you. I'm giving you. You're always giving in each interaction, and therefore when you're a giver, the doors are way more, especially when it's a personalized give. Like the doors just open. They just fucking open. And so like that has served me well for a lot of years. It's just showing up as the giver of cool ideas, knowing that like they need help on the actual strategy and implementation. So I just did this with the website we sold this morning. To give you an example of this, I basically just said like, hey, you want to sell your restoration services? Here's how I would do it. I would have a section like this. I would put this, I'd put blah, 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 and I'd say this, and I have this colors, and I'd put this messaging, and then I'd have your testimonials here. Have a little page about us with your backstory, then a service page for each of the things you offer, and a contact page. That's how I put it together. If you're interested in that, getting that built, I'd be happy to show you how to do that. But most of that pitch was me giving the idea, and like 2% of it was going, and if you want my help building it, I'd be happy to give you a quote. So, but they're most excited about hearing how they can actually sell their thing. In this case, get restoration jobs. So don't sell the hammer, or you're gonna get like it's like selling a plane ride saying like, we have comfy seats, we're economy class, we'll fly anywhere, United Airlines, we're the friendliest staff in all the skies, and all those kind of things. When what you really want to do is like, hey, I know you're sick of the office and the meetings and the politics and driving every day in traffic and waking up to an alarm clock. That's why United Airlines can bring you to the beach, where you're going to drink out of a coconut, sit next to sexy women in the sunshine, under a palm tree with not a care in the world, listening to the ocean and feeling the breeze. And if you like you can jump on a plane ride to get from there to there. You are the plane ride in that scenario where you're just an afterthought. And the reason why we almost always want to talk about our thing, the website development or the SEO, it's because that's where all the work is, right? Like that's in the trenches where all the shit happens, right? But if you can get away from talking about the hammer, because that's the journey is the least interesting part of it. Almost always, like, you want to deduce your stuff down to like really stupid simple, the way weight loss does, is like before and after. This is me fat. This is me in shape. Before and after, right? Like before the website, like what problems are they having? After. And I'll give you a simple example you can use almost always in web design. Is like one of the things they hate is the people who come through the other side of the website. So like, for example, like we have a guy we do some consulting with who sells a shit ton of websites. They're doing almost 200K a month in websites and SEO. And one of the things they say is like all their people complain that like they get tire kickers. People call from the website and they say, how much is it for the blah, blah, blah? And they go, okay, I'll call you back. And they don't call back and they get interrupted by these tire kicker phone calls. So they're not selling a website. They're selling like, hey, we'll get rid of the tire kickers and replace them with people who know how much your shit costs exactly to the penny and are calling you to do business. And like the website is just an afterthought in that, right? It's I'm sick of the tire kickers and I want people just to show up pre-positioned to buy. That's what I'm buying, is that you got a strategy to do that, and the website just happens to be the vehicle that's going to get you from A to B. So think about that in like excruciating detail. What's my before? What's my after? Sometimes you got to sit and brainstorm with it a little bit, but once you do that, like your stuff will instantly get stronger because you'll get away from talking about hammer. Stop, hammer time, hammer, 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 right? Like they don't care about SEO and web development. Nobody woke up and thought about website development and SEO, but they do think about like things like, I need work for my paralegal, I need to meet payroll, I need to like keep my staff busy, I need to get this kind of work. I'm so sick of these traffic tickets, man, I really wish I could get the big cases, like that kind of stuff. So the more you can focus on that, you'll be amazed. And then you're just like, hey, we figured out how to get away from the low value traffic work and get the high value trucking accident cases by building a trucking accident website. I had a cool idea for you on how you can do that. Is it okay if I share it with you? Right? That opens doors. So if you understand that framework, like that's super powerful. And I should mention, we do have a course called opening with anyone, anytime, anywhere, that goes into, I think it's like $80 or something like that. I don't know. I actually don't know how much it costs. I know it's sad, but it's true. But but I put that together specifically just if you guys are interested in that. For those of you guys who want to go deeper on that topic and really nail opening conversations, but don't necessarily like have the budget to pay for it, or maybe don't even want to join the mastermind of the Wolfpack because you don't have the bandwidth or whatever. I put those there for that reason, so you guys can get access to that. Our templates, our strategies, all that kind of stuff. I'm not saying it's the way. I always hate when people say like, you must do this or else. If you deviate from the Frankie Fihn method, you'll be a fucking failure. But there's excuse me. There's usually thousands of ways to be successful and millions of ways or billions of ways to fail. So success leaves clues. So that's why I say you guys can copy that if you're interested in that. I put a link below in the Facebook video. But in general, personalizing and then talking about before and after of what they're after, like you'll just be amazed at open doors. And you'll talk way less about your website development and SEO and way more about their before, like the problems they're experiencing now, as well as the outcomes it'll create once your thing is in place. And you'll be amazed. People will buy it. So appreciate you guys. I'm going to head out now. That's 52 minutes of this old daddy rambling is enough. You guys are awesome. You guys are the coolest. And I mean this. You guys are the best looking. Anyways, much love. And may the force be with you. Guys, if you like this video, you're also going to want to grab some free bonuses, which you can get at our website, Beyond Agency Profits. To make it easy for you, I've put the links to it in the description of this video, as well as pinned in the top comment. And we've got a couple of awesome things. This is what you'll get after you sign up. You get some of our best training, how we're closing clients over Loom videos, how we sometimes sign clients that is not a misprint for under $5 US. How to demonstrate your value in like amazing ways, trainings, how to have your clients write the best copy of your life, how we're closing without phone calls, campaigns that we've generated for clients that have done over $100,000, as well as scripts you can use to get conversations going with clients in under 10 minutes. All you got to simply do is go there, enter your name and email address, and then this is what you'll see on the other side. So if that's interesting to you, make sure to click the links below, and I will see you on the other side.